Hi, welcome to Carrie's Kitchen. I'm Carrie. This is my kitchen. I came up with a dish today in my mind that we're going to make based on what I had left in the house. So I had a zucchini, a couple of carrots, and portobello mushroom caps, a little leftover spinach, some leftover Chardonnay from last night's party, and some herbed cream cheese I used to make some wraps yesterday for a party. Ran to the store, picked up some potatoes, and said, all right, we're going to make sort of an au gratin thing with an onion. I also had an onion, like an onion, a white wine herbed cream sauce to drizzle over the top of layers of zucchini and potatoes and carrots and bake it. So we'll see. First, I'm going to take my onion and I'm going to chop it because I'm going to use it as a sauce after I turn mine. I'm going to set the pan to like a medium-high heat, kind of closer to the high end of medium-high if you have electric. If you have a gas stove, don't have it on the highest high, down to like a medium blue flame. And then this, I'm going to actually dice. I'm going to use a mandolin to slice the potatoes and the zucchini and the carrots, but so that they're even and they cook evenly when you bake them, because that's really important. But with the sautéing, I want these to be diced because I'm going to cook them down. It's going to become part of the sauce. If I were to make them in rings or slice them, it would be like stringy and it would interfere with the texture and the sort of pattern profile texture-wise of the potatoes and the zucchini and stuff. So it's cut in half, and I'm just going to go across like this, cut across in the middle. Real simple little dice technique if you don't know about that. And cut it across. And I'm going to saute it in some olive oil to start. So once the pan gets hot, I'll hit it up with some olive oil. And just a little drizzle, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan, but that it's not swimming in oil. But you don't want it to stick either. And you want them to sweat, not fry. So once that's hot enough, when you can put your hand over it and really feel the heat and maybe see a little motion in the oil, but you can't smell the oil too much. You might smell a little bit of nuttiness from the olive oil, but it's obvious that it's not burning or too hot. If it's way too hot when you throw the onions in, they'll just singe and burn and you won't get the right flavor out of them in the end. So you want it to be hot when they hit the pan, but not so hot that they're on high heat. That's why the medium high. So while that's getting ready, I'm going to slice up my potatoes. So I'm going to put my onions in here. I'm using a flex snap for this because I'm doing lots of slicing for this meal. And it's great because you can just kind of bowl each thing as you go and move on to the next thing. See, it bends. Woo. And you can do it right into the pot, but the pot's not hot enough yet. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to set that over here and start my potatoes. And for my potatoes, I'm just going to use one of these big bowls. This is by a company called Preserve. They're awesome. They use recycled yogurt cups to make all sorts of stuff, and I love their mixing bowls. They're my favorite. I have a set of 3. This is a large, and then there's a medium and a small. Check them out, preserve.com. Very cool. Look, and my mandolin matches. If you don't have a mandolin and you do you want real even slices on stuff, it's great because everything's uniform. All of my slices are going to be the exact same thickness. I used the thicker gauge on this because we're going to be baking it for a long time. If I was just going to be pan frying these, I would have used the thinner thickness. So now this is ready. I'm going to put these in while I do these. I always use kosher salt, and I season each layer as I go. So I'm going to salt this, saute it a little bit. Put my safety glove back on, just to protect my little digits. And then take a look through for eyes, because I like the skin on for the added nutrition. Not to mention, I think it brings a lot of extra flavor to a dish when you use the skin. And when you slice them real thin like this, they're not going to add a lot of funky texture for anybody who's not usually into potato skins. They're generally like, oh, there's skins on these. I don't usually like potato skins, you know. So but if you look through and find little oh, I got a little heel in here. I don't want that. I got a really nice big bag of organic potatoes on sale today. I try to get as much organic and locally grown as possible. That's a big thing for my family. We eat really natural and healthy, and it really matters to me if I can get a local, we live in Missouri, so if I can get a local Missouri or just across the border, Illinois, anything, and organic on top of that would be awesome. There's Amish farms around here, and there's even co-ops and stuff. So check in your area. It makes a huge difference. Like if you think about the whole big picture, it's more important even than just the food being organic, or supporting your local farmers. Not only are you eating healthier food and supporting your local farmers, but it's better for the environment. You're not having stuff shipped from another country or whatever. There's a million reasons why it's better. Okay, maybe not a million, but at least 100. So definitely worth looking into. If you don't pay attention to that yet, start sometime, because it's smart. Start, because it's smart. I've got a zucchini. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the zucchini that I did with the potato. And I'm going to do the same thing with the carrots. The reason I'm using the mandolin for all of them is I want them to be a uniform thickness so that when I layer them, they cook evenly. That's the whole idea. And then when I layer them, I'm going to layer them evenly so that everything has the same tenderness at the middle, the same softness at the outside, all that. All right, so the next thing, carrots. Oh no, zucchini. When you do this, you have to add a little bit of a pressure so that they do slice evenly. Oh, these are zucchinis. This one's got to go because it was on the burner, and that's not cool. These are okay. And let's move on to the mushrooms. Oh, mushrooms. I'm using Portobello mushroom caps. I've rinsed them with a paper towel. They already kind of rinse them out, but you can still see junk. I pulled out the stems. They'll absorb too much water, and I don't want that, so I didn't soak them. What I did was I did a real brief, not this way, just this way, whoop, underwater, and took a paper towel and rubbed them off. And then I went on the gill side and just kind of made sure there was no junk in there as I rotated it, and it's ready to go. Because if you wash them, they can get soggy and gross, and they don't cook right. At least I found, using tips from various cooking shows and stuff I've watched in the past. So I'm just going to do long slices of these. I'm going to end up doing a chop on them, basically. That way. And then I like to group it. For me, personally, I'm not a professional chef. I love to cook. There's a difference. So, to be honest, when I'm constantly still practicing what's effective and doing what they actually say to do on a cooking show when you're chopping and cutting vegetables, etc. Like, I tend to move my knife towards my hand instead of my hand towards my knife. I'm working on it, though. And I'm just chopping away to get nice, even cuts. And I'm going to start adding them straight to the pot because my onions are right where I wanted them. They've got a little bit of a light brown caramelization around the outside, but they're not black. They're not cut off. I'm going to rinse my hand off because I just touched my hair. And I'm touching vegetables. My family's over here, and my son's starting to feel a little neglected. I have a 7-year-old, and he's like, "What's Mom doing? Why am I not getting any attention?" Mason, why can't you say hi? Come here. I'm recording for my little cooking thing on YouTube. Say hi. Come over here. You gotta come over here. This is my son, Mason. Hi. He just celebrated his 7th birthday. And he likes my food. Alright, I love you. I'm going to get back to cooking. Oh. And down he goes. Alright, so the mushrooms, you don't add more oil when you add the mushrooms. The mushrooms inherently have a lot of water in them. So they're going to release that as soon as they hit the heat and blend real well with the onions. Now, I haven't added anything other than salt to this, and olive oil at the beginning and salt, because I'm adding, normally I would start adding my things like garlic or herbs de Provence just to sort of open the flavors before I added the liquids. However, I'm using an herb cream cheese I made yesterday that has some fresh basil from my garden, a little herbs de Provence, and garlic and salt in it that I use to make these wraps. That's another show. But these, that's going to lend so much richness and flavor to the dish that I don't want to over-season it now and have it be some mess at the end, you know? So we're just letting the natural flavors of all this come through. Once I feel comfortable that the mushrooms are sauteed enough that I can add sauce to it and be happy with their size and firmness, then we'll do that. So next, while those are sauteing, I am going to do the very last thing, which is the carrots. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the carrots that I did with the other two ingredients. What's great is this dish is not vegan because it's got the cream cheese in it, but it is vegetarian. And the result is, sorry, this is kind of noisy. Something that's rich enough to feel like, oh, I ate. But still, and it's so rich in vitamins and stuff. I think about what's in the skin of a potato. And then you're getting your starches, you're getting everything without having to have some super overwhelmingly filling meal. You can feel like you're having something, like it's a weekend, I'm having a big hearty meal, when you're having potatoes and mushrooms and onions and carrots and spinach and zucchini, but it's sort of in one dish, almost like a casserole. And I feel like on the weekends it's kind of nice to have a casserole. I don't always do the casserole thing, but it's been a really rainy weekend and it sounded good. Carrots have that same sort of starchy thing. They have more sugars in them, but they roast really well. They lend themselves really well to both sautéing. I gotta take off the gloves. To both sautéing and roasting. They're just great. I use carrots in a ton of stuff because it's all this extra vitamin content and sweetness and texture that's often unexpected, but it adds so much to so many dishes. I feel like people don't think of carrots as something you just add to anything. I add it to everything, like curries, and carrots are big in this house. Cool. So this is doing just what I want it to do, and it's about ready to deglaze. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some white wine, which the cork just broke on. Usually I put a stopper in here. We had a party yesterday at the park for our son's birthday, and we just put the cork right back in after we opened it. We didn't decant or use a stopper. The acid in the wine will help immediately remove all the stuck-on bits from the bottom, which are going to bring such a richness to the sauce. And I'm going to keep that on medium-high heat. I just kind of checking to make sure it was still where I like it. And I'm going to let that cook for just a minute. I don't need all the alcohol to cook out right away, but I want it to be at the point where it doesn't smell like wine anymore. I can smell the onions again and the mushrooms again. That's kind of an idea of how far I want it to reduce. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's simmering real good. It's bubbling. Not over the top, nothing crazy, just enough that I can see it, smell it. And once it stops smelling real alcohol-y, I'm going to add in my cream, my herbed cream cheese that I made yesterday, and voila. And the heat will cook it down really quickly, but then I'm going to need more liquid to cook the potatoes and everything in the oven a little bit. So I am going to add, normally I would add a little bit of vegetable stock. I'm clean out. So I'm still debating if I'm going to use almond milk or water with a pinch more salt. Water doesn't have a lot of flavor, but everything I'm cooking here has so much flavor, I think that maybe I can get away with it. Whatever I'm doing with this sauce, I want it to be fairly heavily salted, and here's the reason. Normally I wouldn't super heavily salt a sauce for the sake of heavily salting a sauce. But none of these vegetables, they're just going in raw. We're layering them and we're pouring a sauce over them and cooking them, sort of like an au gratin. So it's going to be really important that whatever sauce I put on has enough salt content to fully flavor each of these vegetables, that you're eating it and not saying, oh, every bite needs salt, and you're adding a bunch of salt to the dish. Ooh, it smells perfect. So now I'm going to add my herbed cream cheese, and I would say I have about 3/4 of a cup, maybe 1 full cup here of that. Now with me, I very rarely measure. I should get more into it, but I'm going to guesstimate for you as I make stuff. I'll tell you how many carrots, how many potatoes, but I'm not a big measurer. I'll get there. but everything's kind of based on what I still have around, how things look to me as they're cooking, how things smell. It's all sort of based on experience. As you can tell by my voice change, I'm salivating just smelling this. It smells so good. Incredible. So as I'm just going to stir it real slowly, I'm keeping the heat high because this just came out of the refrigerator. So, and it's cream cheese, so it's a real dense cream. So I've got to let it get hot. And then once all of that has sort of, I don't know, what do I want to say? Not melted, but you know, has warmed up and become creamy and smooth and part of all one consistency, I'm going to turn the heat down to medium and add in my almond milk. I've decided we're going almond milk. We don't drink regular milk. If you drink regular milk would be great. So if you could see this, it's almost there. Once it gets there, I'll show you. I don't know how well you can see this is the problem. See that? It's really, if you look at the consistency, see how it's really thick still? I need it to be something that potatoes can cook in. Because we're not just roasting the potatoes. And right now, this would become totally the wrong consistency. Once it reaches that certain temperature and cooks for a long time, potatoes are starchy and absorb. But these, remember, zucchinis are watery. So you don't want to add too much liquid to this either. I'm literally going to add, let's see, I'm going to measure it. I'm going to measure it. Oh, I got to get my measuring cup. Because I know by eye how much I want to add. Cool. All right, so turn this to medium because this is where I want it. And I'm going to add half a cup of almond milk. Make that 3/4 of a cup of almond milk. And I'm just going to stir it together. Basically our sauce is ready. So either I'm going to turn off the heat or lid something if I want it to stay this consistency, or I'm going to put it down on like a warm low. All I really need to do is keep it like a fondue where it's still alive, that I can pour it over everything when I'm going to pop it in the oven. Now is a good time to preheat my oven. I should have already done it actually. And I'm going to cook this at 375. And what I'm going to do when I first put it in, I'm going to do it covered with aluminum foil, and I'm going to cook it like that for 45 minutes. And then I'm going to take the aluminum foil off and cook it for another 20. So then the top will get a little crunchy. Now, if I'm not smelling what I need to smell by 45 minutes, there's sort of you can smell the food really smelling like everything. You're going to smell potatoes, zucchini, carrots, the mushrooms. You're going to smell it all, and then you know it's doing its job. If I'm not smelling any of that, I'm going to let it cook for about 10 to 20 more minutes, just depending on, everybody's oven's a little different, and for me, I find it's often about smell. So I'm going to lower this heat down to a warm low, and let's layer. All right, I may have enough goodies to do 2 of these, but I'm starting with 1. One thing I am going to do is I'm just going to take the teensiest, weенsiest little drizzle of olive oil, and then I'm going to go like this. I'm going to take 1 selected size. I don't know if you know about this, but I cannot buy paper towels if they come in the big sheets. You got to get the ones where you can like tear off little things for little jobs and big things for big jobs. Love that stuff. Anyway, so 1 sheet, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it around. Simply, it's just like when you make anything that might stick. I don't actually want a bunch of new olive oil in the dish at all. I just want the raw potato that's going to be cooking against this to be that I can scoop it out at the end, and then it's not just stuff. But I do all the sides of the pan because I'm going to layer this up like a casserole. So we're going to start with the carrots, actually. I'm going to do carrots all across the pan, I think. Like this. But just loose, like polka dots. Like how you would want polka dots to look. So it's not real thick. Then I'm going to do potatoes. And you're going to slightly overlap them, just a little bit. As you go. And then we're going to do zucchini. See how I slightly overlap. And potatoes. Zucchini. what I am going to add is a little bit of sauce, and then I'm going to add a layer of spinach. I had just a little bit. I made these little wraps for a party yesterday. Again, another episode. But I have maybe a cup and a half of spinach-ish, like a nice, a big handful of spinach, sort of. And that was what was left of my spinach after making all these wraps. So I'm going to put that in between. So I'm going to do one little layer of the sauce, which has all of our salt and pepper. I forgot pepper. Love having a pepper mill. Always use it. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, my sauce, kosher salt. My salt. Kosher salt. Always kosher salt. Unless certain things I feel like call for sea salt or shaved salt, you know, like the like scales, the salt scales. But that's more for like appetizer-y stuff or... Okay, so I'm going to use oh no, I have to wash my ladle. So, my ladle, that's my husband right there, sitting beer. Used my ladle for pancakes this morning. So, it was in the dishwasher, I hadn't run it yet. Washed, ready to go. So, I'm going to ladle some of my sauce over the top of this. Look at those mushrooms. I wish you could see this, really see this. It's fantastic. Doesn't that look great? And I'm so excited. It smells so good too, doesn't it?
It smells great. Yeah, the cooking onions and stuff.
Oh, right? The white wine. Oof.
And the texture of those mushrooms in here.
Right?
Perfect.
Thanks. So I'm putting just enough sauce on here where they're not even fully covered totally. Like a nice, just enough. I don't know if you can really see how much sauce. So you can see everything in between. The reason being the zucchinis, once again, are going to release, even though the potatoes are going to suck some of it up, the zucchinis are going to release a lot of water during the cooking process. So I want to make sure that I'm not over saucing it and the whole thing's a soupy mess. So this is going to be my spinach layer. And I'm just going to sort of evenly layer the spinach sort of throughout. So every bite's going to have a bit of spinach, but there's not enough spinach to make it watery. Now, one thing that I am going to do that I think is really important here, I'm not going to layer zucchini on top of zucchini and potato on top of potato. Last layer was potato, zucchini. So this time I'm going to layer zucchini, potato. So that zucchinis and potatoes are on top of each other instead of vice versa. So again, the potatoes are sucking up the zucchini water, not the zucchinis becoming zucchini soup. Got it? So that is what I'm doing. Once you figure out how things cook, even if you've never cooked them together, if you understand that a zucchini is going to release a certain amount of water and this thing's going to absorb like more flavor than you ever expected, and this thing's going to lend itself well to any seasoning profile you can imagine, you know, you just kind of figure out how each different vegetable works, or fruit or meat, whatever it is, that it becomes a lot easier to create these things on your own. Because I find that I do use recipes from time to time, but I find it way more fun to come up with stuff now based on what I have left over from the recipes, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put the last of this sauce over the top of the dish, and I'm going to do it fairly evenly. And I want to make sure as much of it goes into these little sides as possible. Just kind of made a mess there, but whatevs. That's what rags, cooking cloths and tea towels and rags and stuff are for. So, let me use this little guy that I already used earlier. Just kind of clear this stuff out. Alright, cool. So, I'm feeling it. I'm going to cook this guy with... Now remember, when I said heavily salted, the cream cheese, the herbed cream cheese I made was pretty heavily salted because I was using it with just vegetables and spinach in a wrap. So all of the flavor, aside from the vegetable like flavor profiles, all the salt and seasoning was coming from that cream cheese. So understand, if you were going to use just cream cheese, you want to add salt, herbs de Provence. I used fresh basil from my garden, and I think I might have used a touch of, it wasn't garlic, I used this. It's a beer brought horseradish brown mustard. So it had a touch of horseradish, the vinegariness from the mustard and the brown mustard seeds. but a tiny touch, just to brighten the flavor so it wasn't just a dense cream cheese with herbs, if that makes sense. I might have used a little rice wine vinegar, just a little touch, something to just sort of say, ooh, turn it vinaigrette, just a touch. And that's just what I had, and it sounded good. All right, so I'm going to cover this with aluminum foil, and if you can see my dog, where is she? She's Sadie. She's right here. You can't see her off camera. She's obsessed with the reflection that foil makes. Like that reflection thing, she's going nuts. Oh, I don't know if she thinks it's a bug or what. She goes crazy. It's okay. She has like a sonar for it. I pull out the tin foil and she wakes up from sleeping. It's crazy. All right. So I've got this nice and tightly covered in a casserole dish. It's your standard large casserole dish. I'd have to check the bottom for the actual dimensions, but it's a very standard size large Pyrex dish. So I'm going to put this, my oven's preheated. I'm going to put this in the oven, and the middle rack in the center, covered, and I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes. All right, so it's perfect. It's rested just enough that you can still see the browning and it didn't get soggy, but it's settled. And you'll understand that if you don't cook a lot, it'll make sense to you once you see a few things settle. It'll be great. Had I cooked this with, say, eggs or a cheesy, crummy topping, I would have allowed it to rest uncovered because the topping would have sogged. But because I'm using like root vegetables and zucchini, I thought it was really important that the outsides not get too leathery. All right. Bon appetit!